technically the hat I'm wearing matches the jersey because they both have Canadian flags on them. So there you go. I don't have a Vancouver Giants hat, or else I'd be wearing a Vancouver Giants hat. And so let's go ahead and have a little discussion of the two games that are on schedule for today, as well as some news going on around the hockey world. Not even just all NHL news either. So we've got Boston and Tampa starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, which is 4 p.m. Pacific. This is Boston's last gasp. And the way that Tampa Bay has taken over this series, I am expecting Tampa to win this one in 5. I am expecting this to be pretty much done. And the team that I took in my bracket to win the Stanley Cup to be on to the next round. Now, the team I took to be in the finals against them, that may be a different story. But for Tampa, they look good as advertised. And you have to think that if Stamkos were to come back for the next round, if Stamkos were able to play, what would that do? And the question of that isn't just a matter of, hey, that would make them unstoppable. It might be, does that change the way this team works? Does that change things for them for a negative? And again, as weird as that may sound, if it throws off the chemistry on the lines, because you've got to put Stamkos into the top 6 now, so somebody's got to get bumped out. Yeah, sometimes a player coming back can kind of throw things into a little bit of chaos. So for right now, things look good. And the Tampa Bay Lightning, they definitely look like they are ready to avenge what happened last year. The only way to truly avenge it would be if they win the Stanley Cup. If they go to the next round and they play against the Islanders and they lose that in 5, it'll all come back. The whole, well, that's it, they're chokers. We've seen that round after round. I've always thought that's weird when fans will say, oh, that team's a choker, and yet you'll see they got it to like the 3rd round, even the 2nd round. If you get to the 2nd round, you're not, in my eyes, you're not a choker. You got through round 1. So, Boston, I didn't get a feeling from them right from the get-go that they necessarily were 100%. And I'm not going to make any excuses for that. I think Tampa Bay has just been the better team. So we'll see whether or not Boston has any fight back in them. If not, this series could already be over and Tampa Bay could be booking their flight to Edmonton today. Think about that. There's no reason for them to stay in the bubble in Toronto. So unless they're just going to wait until both teams can be on the same flight, they could put them on a flight right now, fly them to Edmonton. And then they could scout whichever teams in the West that they're going to play, as long as those series go on long enough. Because also in the West, 9:45 Eastern, 6:45 Pacific, we're going to see the start of Colorado and Dallas, and Colorado's fighting for their lives. So Colorado could be out the same night as Tampa goes on to the next round. And for Colorado, I don't know what to say here. So Tampa Bay's been the better team, I would say, between Dallas and Colorado. Colorado's had an edge in play. And yet, every time Dallas gets a decent chance, it seems to end up in the net. Some heroic play from players that have been getting paid a lot of money this year that didn't necessarily play up to it. Sagan, Ben, Radulov, the top line. That line dragged the Stars down often this year, and now here we are, it's playoff time, and they're good to go. It's nice to see, and because of the fact that guys like Hintz and Gurianov are still performing as they did during the regular season, while those guys have stepped up, it's made Dallas very difficult to stop. And Dallas is a big physical team. So if we get Dallas and Vegas in the next round, well, Vegas would be taking out another team of mine in all likelihood, but I think that series could be close, and I think that's a series that could go the full 7. And if Colorado's going to get to 7, they'd have to do it tonight. And Jared Bednar was not all that forthcoming on who his goaltender was going to be tonight, which really, in all honesty, is not a huge surprise, but he did say he expected more from Francouz than we saw last night. Didn't think he had a great game, which is good, because you can't argue that with a straight face. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Dallas, meanwhile, still doesn't have Ben Bishop, still doesn't have Stephen Johns, and they're getting ready to move on to the next round with Hudobin as their starting goaltender. Hudobin is now getting into the realm of the Arturs Urbe run with the Carolina Hurricanes, in that it's an unlikely run. It's a goaltender's been told he's too short to be a starter throughout his career, and yet here we are. And last night, Miro Heiskanen with his 16th point, he passed Craig Hartsburg on the all-time points list by a Stars defenseman. Of course, that was 1981. That was the Minnesota North Stars. And so while I'm watching Canucks records from 1982 drop, I'm now watching North Stars records from 1981 drop, which just takes me back and reminds me how old I am. And it does take me back to the first couple of Stanley Cup playoffs I watched. I was a huge Craig Hartsburg fan as a kid. So, yeah, Heiskanen passing him, that's pretty heady territory, and we'll see what Heiskanen can do next year. It's been a really, really strong playoff run for Heiskanen, who, yeah, he has looked like he could be a Norris Trophy winner at some point. That gets thrown around a lot, though. Like, if I had a dime for every defenseman that I've heard somebody say, he's a future Norris Trophy winner, and I'm not using this to put down Heiskanen, but I've heard about Makar, I've heard it about Hughes, I have heard it about Hamilton and Carolina. Of course, there's talk about that. Carlson, who may not win it this year from the Capitals, and may end up going to Nashville, and Roman Josi. So, you know, the number of really good defensemen in the league is really high. I wanted to do a video on that for a long time, on, you know, who are the prime defensemen on all 31 teams, and just looking at how many excellent defensemen there are. There's the Leafs logo, which means Morgan Rielly, right? So tonight, Dallas and Heiskanen, they can start adding to that list, and Dallas can go further in the playoffs than they have in a very, very long time. And for whatever reason, a matchup with Colorado favors Dallas. So I know there have been people who've said, I don't know why he talks about the historical data, because for some weird reason, some teams have really good records against others. And the 2018 series and the 2020 series between Boston and Tampa looked oddly similar. All right, news of the day. If you're an Oilers fan, I'm sure you were tremendously concerned about whether or not Patrick Russell would stay or leave as a UFA, and I got good news for you. He's staying on a $700,000 deal. Russell will still be with the Oilers, which means we will still have announcers saying Russell passes it to Russell, and they won't specify which one. It's one of those little nitpicks I have that just drives me completely mental. Where I'm like, okay, which Russell got the goal? And I gotta wait for the app to tell me. Because, you know, I'm writing it on the board and all that. But, yeah, Patrick Russell comes back. He had some bad luck this year. He didn't get a goal, and he had lots of close calls to getting that first call. He's gonna get a goal next year. So he was kind of the Toby Reeder for the team this year, but minus the dislike from those in charge, and I don't think it would have been warranted anyways. On Florida, Brady Keeper has signed a 1-year, 2-way extension with the Florida Panthers, and so I expect that to be league minimum as well, probably $700,000 for him. Limited action with Florida. I'm not gonna go on and spew on all kinds of stats of Brady Keeper. I don't know where he fits into the grand scheme of things for Florida. I do think change is coming once that new general manager goes in. That's where we'll start to see some changes with the Florida Panthers. And Eddie Olczyk's name is now in the mix for the general manager of Florida. I think everybody is. And when you see Olczyk and you see Kevin Week's names on there, and I'm thinking, do they watch a lot of TV? Because we'll know if Elliot Friedman's name at some point is tied to the Florida Panthers GM job, right? Yeah, that Elliot guy, he seems to know what he's talking about. We should hire him. Get him away from the TV. Toronto. Friedman, speaking of Friedman, not a great segue, reports that the Canes have interest in Freddie Anderson. And of course, the first thought I had is Florida or Carolina has James Reimer and they have Jake Gardiner. What an amazing world we would live in if the Toronto Maple Leafs traded Freddie Anderson to Carolina. Okay, we're going to fix the blue line. Got to fix the goaltending. Here's James Reimer and Jake Gardiner. Ta-da! I think, I know it's not going to happen, but they're looking for a defenseman. They would have to get a goaltender back. The other goaltender is Mrazek. If you go from Anderson to Mrazek, I don't know. You know, it would be a gutsy move by Dubas if that happened. And isn't Mrazek's contract up next year too? Like, so yeah, there's definitely some risk in that. But again, you know, we don't know for sure what's going to happen. The only reason I'm talking about it is because Friedman's reporting on it, and he said Carolina, and my first thought was, oh my God, they could get back James Reimer. Oh, that would probably be the most Maple Leaf thing that could happen, is that they get Jake Gardiner and then re-sign Cody Ceci, and at that point, yeah. Blue line fixed. Kyle Dubas out. All right. Next up, looking outside the NHL, the KHL. I've talked about the KHL before, and Kunlun Red Star. I don't know how to feel about this. So during the world shutting down, Kurt Fraser and the assistant coach and goaltending coach of the team, who are Steve Casper and Dusty Emu, they go home. Because it's what you do in a pandemic, you go home. And Kunlun Red Star has decided, all right, well, we're not going to pay them. And not only that, but cut them off of their medical. So for Kurt Fraser, who is diabetic, he has had to pay $50,000 out of his own pocket for his medication. I'm thinking to live because he's diabetic. And during a pandemic. And Kunlun Red Star said, oh, no, it's the visas. See, we're a Chinese-owned team, and it's the visas. Now, Kunlun Red Star apparently is going to be playing out of a suburb of Moscow this year. Again, things are different because of the world coming to an end. But they told him, well, we're having problems with visas. So Kurt Fraser reached out to other coaches in the exact same situation, and they said, no problem here. We're still getting paid, and they're bringing us back over. So they're suing Kunlun Red Star for about $1 million combined between the three of them. And this is just not a great look because other coaches are getting paid. I'm not sure what their defense is going to be honest, unless they're going to argue Chinese-owned team makes it different than the other KHL teams that are employing other North American-based coaches. But I don't know. Kurt Fraser clearly disappointed with the entire situation. And I got to say that's another throwback to the 1982 run for the Vancouver Canucks. And it's weird how many of these are going on right now. So hopefully they straighten that out. And it's just one of those things with the KHL. But I'm going to say it's not a league thing in this situation. It is a single team kind of pulling a dick move on this one, to be honest. And then also announced, there's a Peewee hockey tournament that was scheduled for February 10th to 21st in Quebec, which features about 25,000 players and 400 volunteers, about 400 billet families, and it's been canceled. So the 2021 Peewee hockey tournament, they've canceled, and just the logistics, it's not going to work. So again, this is for next February, and they're canceling it now. Which makes sense because you don't want families making plans for things that they're not going to be able to do. But this comes back to something else I've talked about. It's going to be a tough year for hockey players for development if we do see tournaments and leagues and all of these things struggling to exist right now with the current environment that 2020's put us in. And it is going to hurt the development of sports. I mean, not just in hockey, but of athletes in many, many sports. And it'll be interesting to see what that does to a draft class in, say, 5 or 6 years. Where we start saying, yeah, these guys, they're not as developed. They lost that 1 year of development, key year of development. Maybe the draft in 2 years is affected. They lost that key year of development when they were, supposed to be getting their feet wet in junior hockey, and the league got closed down. So we'll see what happens in the 2020-2021 season and how many games, for instance, the Vancouver Giants play and where and what the situations are, because the NHL can exist right now because 62% of the revenues are not tied to the gate. 62% of the revenues are tied to everything that's not gate related. Whereas junior hockey, even the American Hockey League, which is one notch below the NHL, very, very gate driven leagues, and they can't really exist without fans in attendance. It just doesn't work. So we'll see how many leagues and tournaments and all of that are affected and how that changes things going down the road and what the National Hockey League might be in their best interest to do to help out. Because, again, they're looking at Peewee tournaments, at minor leagues, at juniors and all that, and saying, this is where our players come from. It's in our best interest to help these leagues out so that these players continue their development, and then we're able to bring them into our league. So we'll see what happens. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. It means a ton. And I will talk to you again soon.